Have you ever felt like something invisible is holding you back? Maybe you've done everything right, yet doors don't open, relationships stay tense, or a quiet heaviness follows you no matter how hard you try to shake it off. Yogananda often reminded his students that the soul carries lessons from the past, not as punishment, but as opportunities waiting to be completed. Some people call this spiritual debt, an imbalance between the love we've received and the love we've yet to give back. Tonight, we're going to explore 9 subtle signs that you might still be carrying a debt of the heart and how recognizing it can help you walk lighter, freer, more awake to the life that wants to move through you. Before we dive into the first sign, take a moment to set your intention. If you're ready to prepare your soul to release this spiritual debt, write in the comments, Yogananda, guide my soul. Putting it into words is like opening a quiet doorway inside yourself, an invitation for clarity, peace, and guidance as you listen to what follows. First sign, recurring obstacles in the same area of your life. Think about patterns that keep circling back. Maybe every time you're close to a breakthrough, in love, work, or creativity, something knocks you down. It's as if life is whispering, look deeper, the lesson isn't finished. A woman once shared with Yogananda how she always found herself in jobs where she felt undervalued. No matter how many times she switched companies, the same story repeated. When she finally asked in meditation, what am I meant to learn? She realized her own fear of speaking her truth had created a loop. As she worked on courage, the pattern dissolved. Sometimes, a spiritual debt shows up as a stubborn door that stays closed until you align your choices with honesty, service, or forgiveness. The obstacle isn't there to punish you. It's a guidepost pointing toward freedom. Second sign, unexplained heaviness or guilt. There are moments when the heart feels heavy without a clear reason. You've slept well, eaten well, nothing dramatic has happened, yet there's a quiet ache, a sense of unfinished business. Yogananda described this as the soul's way of asking us to bring light to places we've neglected. That weight isn't always about something you did wrong. Sometimes it's about kindness withheld or gratitude never expressed. It can be an old wound you've outgrown but never fully tended. One student used to wake up with a nameless sadness every dawn. Through gentle introspection and prayer, she discovered she'd been carrying regret over a friendship left unresolved. A simple letter of appreciation, even if never sent, lifted years of fog from her chest. When heaviness lingers, sit quietly, breathe, and ask, is there love I still need to offer, or forgiveness I need to extend to myself? Spiritual debts often dissolve the moment they're brought into awareness with compassion. Third sign, people from your past reappearing unexpectedly. Have you noticed how certain people seem to circle back into your life, even after years of silence? It might be an old friend who suddenly writes, a family member you haven't spoken to, who calls at just the right moment, or even someone you once hurt, or who hurt you, appearing in a dream or in the street. In Yogananda's teachings, every encounter carries potential for balance. Some of these returns aren't random coincidences. They can be invitations from life itself, asking you to finish a conversation that was left incomplete, to forgive, to release, or simply to bless and let go. I once knew a man who kept bumping into an old colleague he'd parted with on bitter terms. At first, he thought it was just a strange coincidence, but after the third time, he paused and asked himself what remained unsaid. He reached out, shared an honest apology, and the quiet tension that had sat in his chest for years simply melted away. When someone from your past keeps reappearing, instead of brushing it off, ask yourself, what thread is still loose here? What piece is waiting to be spoken? The debt may only be a small word, a sincere wish for their happiness, or a promise to release both of you from an old story. Fourth sign, feeling drained after certain choices. Sometimes the clue isn't about people, but about how you feel after making a decision. Have you ever done something that, on paper, looked right? Maybe it pleased others, maybe it followed logic, but afterwards you felt tired, as though your spirit had been quietly emptied. That inner exhaustion can be a sign that your choice was out of alignment with what your deeper self knows to be true. Spiritual debts often accumulate when we trade authenticity for approval, or when we say yes while our whole being whispers no. A student once told Yogananda that every time she accepted social invitations out of obligation, she returned home restless and strangely sad. He suggested she experiment with small acts of sincerity, saying thank you, but I need quiet tonight, when her body asked for rest. As she honored her inner compass, her energy returned, and relationships became simpler and more genuine. If a decision repeatedly leaves you drained rather than quietly strengthened, it may be a signal to pause and listen. Ask yourself, did I act from fear or from love? Did I betray a value or a boundary that matters to my soul? Sometimes clearing a spiritual debt is as simple as giving yourself permission to choose in harmony with your own truth. Fifth sign, persistent dreams or symbols calling your attention. Sometimes the quietest voice of your soul speaks at night. You may dream of an old home, a forgotten face, or even of climbing endless stairs and never reaching the top. These dreams don't always predict the future, clear. Often they reveal lessons your waking mind is too busy to notice. In Yogananda's view, the subconscious is like a messenger between the soul and the personality. When a debt of the heart lingers, its echo can surface in images or symbols that repeat until we finally pause and listen. A student once told me she kept dreaming of a small locked box hidden under a tree. She felt both curiosity and unease. Through journaling and prayer, she realized the box represented words of gratitude she'd never spoken to her late father. When she sat at his grave and read a simple letter aloud, the dream stopped, leaving behind a calm sweetness she hadn't felt in years. Not every dream carries a heavy message, but if a certain image keeps tugging at you, or you wake with emotions that feel bigger than the story of the dream itself, give it space. Write it down, meditate with it, or ask silently before sleep. If there's something I need to understand, please show me with clarity and kindness. Spiritual debts often wait patiently until we give them the courtesy of attention. The same applies to waking symbols, a line in a book that repeats in your mind, a song that plays at just the right moment, a feather on your path after thinking about someone you miss. Life is creative when it tries to guide us. What matters is not superstition, but receptivity, staying soft enough inside to notice the thread being offered. Sixth sign, struggling to forgive or let go. Few things weigh down the heart like old resentments. Sometimes we think we've moved on, yet a single memory can still tighten the chest or stir a quiet anger. That clinging is often a sign that some part of us is still holding an unpaid balance, not in the sense of punishment, but of an energy that needs release. Yogananda often said forgiveness isn't about excusing harmful behavior or pretending pain didn't happen. It's about freeing yourself from the chain that binds you to the moment of hurt. Imagine carrying a stone in your pocket every day. After a while, you stop noticing its weight, yet it shapes how you walk. When you forgive, you don't deny the stone existed. You simply choose to put it down and walk unburdened. I remember a man who couldn't forgive a business partner who had betrayed him. Even after building a new life, he spoke of the betrayal with fresh anger, as if it had happened yesterday. In meditation, he realized he wasn't protecting himself anymore. He was feeding a story that kept him tethered to a past that could no longer be changed. Through steady practice, he learned to send thoughts of peace, not because the act had been right, but because his freedom was worth more than the wound. Forgiveness is also about self-compassion. Sometimes the hardest person to release is ourselves, for words we didn't say, for mistakes made in ignorance, for simply not knowing better at the time. Clearing that inner debt begins with humility and ends with gentleness. I didn't know then what I know now, and I choose to grow from it rather than stay trapped. If forgiveness feels too large all at once, start with willingness. Whisper, I am willing to see this with new eyes. Even a seed of willingness can crack the hardest shell and allow light to enter. The moment you begin to let go, even a little, a fresh current of life starts moving through you, sweeping away the stale air where pain used to live. Seventh sign, repeated loss or endings that force reflection. Sometimes life feels like it's taking things from us over and over. A job, a relationship, even a cherished routine that suddenly stops working. At first it can seem cruel or unfair, but often these endings are quiet invitations to look deeper. Yogananda taught that loss can serve as a purifier, burning away attachments that no longer serve the soul's journey. Think of a forest after a fire. For a time, everything looks bare, yet the soil becomes richer, ready for seeds to sprout again. When you experience repeated endings, it may be a sign that something unresolved is ready to be released. An old belief about who you must be, a story about your worth, a fear of standing on your own. I once met a woman who felt cursed because every new friendship eventually drifted away. Through patient introspection, she saw how much she clung to people out of fear of loneliness. The losses weren't punishments, they were mirrors, showing her the places where she still owed herself freedom. When she learned to sit peacefully in her own company, relationships began to stay, not out of need but out of choice. Loss is never easy, and grief is a sacred process. But if similar endings keep visiting you, pause and ask, what is this clearing space for? What wisdom is hidden behind the pain? Sometimes the debt is simply allowing the soul to grow beyond the comfort of what's familiar. Eighth sign, opportunities that vanish when you act from fear. Have you ever had a chance within reach, a new role, a relationship, an adventure, only to watch it slip away after you hesitated or doubted yourself? It's as if life was saying, I offered you this gift, but you weren't ready to trust. Fear can quietly block the current of grace. Yogananda often reminded students that the universe moves toward those who move with courage, not recklessness, but with faith in the goodness that guides every step. When you choose fear, you sometimes create a small imbalance, a pause in the flow that asks to be corrected by learning to trust. A young musician once told me that every time he was invited to play on a bigger stage, he found an excuse to decline. I'm not ready, he would say, yet months later he felt heavy, as though he'd betrayed something inside. The debt wasn't to a person or an event, it was to his own calling. Only when he finally said yes, despite trembling, did opportunities begin to stay open. If doors seem to close the moment you second-guess yourself, consider whether a part of you is still trying to pay an old bill of self-belief. Spiritual debts are often invitations to step into your strength. The next time an opening appears, breathe, center yourself, and ask, am I turning away because it's truly wrong for me, or because I'm afraid of shining? Life supports those willing to walk with a brave heart. Ninth sign, a quiet inner voice urging you to make amends or serve. Sometimes, amid the noise of daily life, a softer voice tries to speak. It may come as a sudden thought while you're driving, a whisper just before sleep, or a steady nudge while you're doing something ordinary. Call that person. Give back. Offer your time. Say thank you. This isn't guilt in disguise. It's guidance from a deeper part of you, inviting you to balance what's unfinished. Yogananda often said that the soul knows how to restore harmony if we're willing to act on its promptings. Service, gratitude, and honest amends are powerful ways to clear old weights from the heart. I remember a student who kept thinking about a teacher who had once shown him kindness. For years, he ignored the impulse to reach out. Then, one evening, he finally sent a short message of appreciation. The reply was simple: "You have no idea how much I needed to hear that today." In giving thanks, he not only freed himself from a quiet heaviness, but also lit up someone else's path. When an inner whisper urges you to repair, give, or bless, don't dismiss it as random noise. That's often the soul pointing you toward freedom. Even the smallest gesture, a note, a prayer, a helping hand, can settle an old account and open space for fresh light to enter. Spiritual debts aren't punishments written on some cosmic ledger. They're reminders of the love, honesty, and courage still waiting to flow through you. When you notice the patterns, obstacles repeating, old faces returning, dreams that speak, doors closing from fear, or that gentle push to forgive or serve, see them not as burdens but as guides. Clearing these debts doesn't mean becoming perfect. It means being willing to listen, to release what's heavy, and to act from a place of kindness, integrity, and faith. Every time you choose light over heaviness, sincerity over hiding, service over indifference, you dissolve an old weight and step into a freer, more vibrant life. Take a moment now to breathe and write in the comments, "I choose to walk free and clear my heart with light." Declaring it helps your own soul anchor the decision. And if this message speaks to you, subscribe to the channel so we can keep exploring together the timeless wisdom that teachers like Yogananda shared. Practices for living with clarity, courage, and love. Remember, your life isn't meant to be held hostage by unfinished stories. The moment you listen to what your heart is asking and take one honest step, the universe rushes in to meet you with peace, strength, and new beginnings. Walk lightly, keep your heart open, and trust that every debt of the soul can be settled with awareness, kindness, and the steady light of your own spirit. My dear friend, what if I told you that this whisper is not really about communication at all? Yes, it changes how others respond to you. Yes, it can soften anger, open hearts, and create instant connection. But beneath all of that, something far greater is happening. Every time you whisper, "Om Divine Spirit, speak through me," you are training your consciousness. You are teaching yourself to step aside from the small ego, with its fears and needs, and to stand in your higher self. And the more you practice, the more that higher self becomes your natural state. At first, you may notice the change only in your words. People will tell you, "You sound calmer," or "I feel peace" when you talk. But as weeks pass, you'll notice your thoughts shifting too. That inner voice, the one that chatters all day with worries, judgments, complaints, begins to quiet. You start to notice more compassion in your thoughts, more patience, more wisdom. The whisper doesn't just purify your speech, it purifies your mind. And when your mind becomes purified, your whole being follows. Your emotions become steadier. You no longer get pulled so easily into anger, fear, or envy. Your relationships begin to heal because you are no longer speaking from wounds. You are speaking from wholeness. Even your body feels the shift. Remember, your words carry prana, life force. When you whisper the mantra, you're not just blessing others, you're blessing yourself, sending divine energy through your own system. Over time, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop feeling separate. You look at others and realize the same divine presence you are whispering to is also within them. You no longer see a colleague, a stranger, or even an enemy. You see another soul, wrapped in a different body, but made of the same light as you. And when you recognize that, love becomes effortless. This is what the yogic path calls unity consciousness. It is the recognition that there is no me speaking to you. There is only the one speaking to itself through different forms. Imagine how differently you would live if every word you spoke came from that awareness. Imagine how differently the world itself would look if more of us whispered before we spoke. The whisper, then, is not simply a technique for better conversations. It is a form of meditation you can practice all day long. Instead of sitting silently in a temple for 20 minutes, you carry the temple with you, breathing once, whispering inwardly, and allowing divine energy to flow. Every conversation becomes a spiritual practice. Every word becomes a prayer. And here is the true miracle. The more you practice, the less effort it takes. In the beginning, you'll have to remind yourself, breathe, whisper, speak. But with time it becomes automatic. You don't even have to think about it. The whisper becomes who you are. And then without even trying, you discover that you are living as a channel of divine presence. At that point, even your silence speaks. Even your presence in a room changes people. You may say nothing, but others feel calmer just being near you. Why? Because you are radiating the same divine energy you once had to whisper for. This is the highest benefit of the practice, not just that your words change others, but that your very being becomes a blessing. Now that you've seen the depth of this whisper, let me show you how it works in everyday life. Because spirituality isn't meant to stay on the meditation cushion or in sacred books. It's meant to flow through the way you live, love, and speak every single day. Let's begin with the place most of us face challenges: family. Think of those moments when tension rises, a child who won't listen, a partner who doesn't understand, a parent who criticizes. Normally, we react from ego. We defend, argue, or withdraw. But if in that moment you take a breath, whisper inwardly, Divine Spirit, speak through me, something shifts. Instead of responding to their anger, you respond to their soul. Your words come softer, clearer, with less need to win and more desire to heal. And suddenly, the argument softens. You're not just speaking, you're transmitting peace into the family atmosphere. Now think about work. The sages made her be an instructions, a team member presenting ideas, or someone trying to resolve conflict with a colleague. At work, words often become tools of control or competition. But when you whisper before speaking, you shift from ego-driven communication to service-driven communication. Your coworkers feel it. They sense you're not trying to dominate but to uplift. That's why leaders who practice this often find that loyalty, trust, and creativity flourish around them. Their words don't just direct, they inspire. Consider also the moments of conflict. Someone attacks you, insults you, or challenges your beliefs. The natural reaction is defense, to hit back with sharp words or retreat in silence. But imagine pausing for even 2 seconds, whispering, Divine Spirit, speak through me. Suddenly, you're not just a wounded ego trying to protect itself. You become a channel for compassion. Instead of reacting to the words, you see the pain behind them. And when you answer from that place, you often disarm hostility in an instant. What could have become a fight turns into an unexpected opening. And finally, think of leadership and influence. Whether you're addressing one person or 1,000, the consciousness behind your words sets the tone. People don't remember every detail you say, but they always remember how you made them feel. Whispering before you speak ensures that what they feel is truth, light, and authenticity. It's why saints and sages could say the simplest sentences and move mountains in people's hearts. They weren't speaking from themselves. They were letting the divine speak through them. So you see, this whisper doesn't belong only in a temple or during a speech. It belongs in your kitchen, your office, your classroom, your everyday life. Each conversation is an opportunity to practice. Each exchange is a chance to let higher wisdom flow. And when you do, you'll notice something powerful. Not only do others change, but so do you. You stop feeling anxious about being misunderstood. You stop rehearsing what to say or fearing the outcome. Instead, you trust the whisper, and in that trust, you discover freedom. Let me share some real stories, because I know you might be wondering, does this whisper really work outside of spiritual talks? The answer is yes, and the beauty of it is that it works in the most ordinary moments of life. One of my students, let's call her Maria, was a mother of 2 teenage boys. For years, her relationship with her eldest had been filled with arguments. Every conversation turned into a battle of words. She told me once, it feels like I'm speaking, and he's already building walls before I even finish the sentence. When she learned this whisper, she decided to try it. The very next time her son challenged her, she paused, whispered silently in her mind, Divine Spirit, speak through me, and then spoke. She didn't change her message, but her energy had shifted. Instead of defensiveness, her words carried calm. Instead of control, they carried compassion. To her surprise, her son didn't explode this time. He actually listened. That moment was the first crack in a wall that had been building for years. Slowly their relationship softened. Not because she found the perfect words, but because she found the right consciousness. Another story comes from James, a business leader. He was intelligent, ambitious, and respected for his results, but feared for his coldness. His employees often said, "He doesn't really hear us. He just gives orders." When James began whispering before each meeting, something remarkable happened. His tone softened. His presence shifted. He still gave the same instructions, but people described the atmosphere as lighter, safer, more inspiring. Within months, turnover decreased and morale improved. James didn't become less of a leader, he became more of a guide, and all because he invited divine presence into his speech before uttering a word. There's also David, a counselor working with troubled youth. He had all the training, but some kids simply wouldn't open up. One day, before speaking to a particularly resistant boy, he whispered, "Divine Spirit, speak through me." What came out of his mouth wasn't rehearsed, wasn't even what he had planned to say. He found himself speaking directly to the boy's hidden fear, and it broke through weeks of silence. The boy cried, opened up, and finally began the healing process. David later told me, "It wasn't me speaking, it was something greater flowing through me." These stories show us a profound truth. It doesn't matter if you're a parent, a CEO, a teacher, or just someone trying to be understood. The whisper changes the energy behind your words, and that energy changes everything. People feel it, even if they don't understand it consciously. They sense sincerity. They sense truth. They sense something sacred moving through you. And perhaps most importantly, you feel it too. You walk away from conversations lighter, calmer, more connected. You stop asking, "Did I say it right?" and start feeling, "I was aligned." That alignment is worth more than any clever argument. It's the difference between words that fade and words that heal. Now, I want to be completely honest with you. Just like any spiritual practice, this whisper can be misunderstood, misused, or even ignored when you need it the most. And if that happens, you might think, maybe it doesn't work for me. But the truth is, it does work. You just need to understand how to apply it with the right attitude. So let's go through the most common mistakes people make with this whisper, and how you can avoid them. The first mistake is treating it like a magic spell. Some people think, if I just say these words, everything will change instantly. But remember, it's not the words alone. It's the energy, the surrender, the consciousness you bring to them. If you whisper without sincerity, if you're still holding on to your ego's need to control, it becomes just another phrase. The real power comes when you whisper with intention, with humility, with trust. The second mistake is mixing the whisper with ego-driven motives. For example, someone might whisper, "Divine Spirit, speak through me," but then use their words to manipulate, to dominate, or to get what they want. That's not surrender, that's disguise. And people feel it. They may not be able to explain why, but they'll sense the inconsistency. Remember, the whisper isn't about bending others to your will, it's about aligning your will to the divine. The third mistake is expecting perfection. Some people try it once, notice ego thoughts still rising, and think, "I must be doing it wrong." But that's not failure, that's normal. Even after whispering, your old habits might come up. Maybe you still feel defensive, maybe irritation slips into your tone. That's okay. The whisper is not a one-time cure, it's a lifelong practice. With consistency, the ego loosens its grip, and your higher self shines through more often. Don't quit just because you stumble. Each stumble is part of the training. The fourth mistake is using the whisper only in important situations. Yes, you might remember it before a job interview, a presentation, or a difficult conversation. But then you forget it in the small daily interactions, with your partner, with a friend, with a stranger at the store. Yet those everyday moments are the real laboratory for your growth. If you whisper only in the big moments, you'll miss the chance to transform the ordinary. Use it everywhere, even in casual exchanges, and you'll see your whole life begin to shift. The fifth mistake is making it mechanical. Sometimes after a few weeks, people repeat it automatically, without presence. The lips move, the words sound in the mind, but the heart isn't there. That's when the whisper loses its spark. Every time you use it, come back to sincerity. Feel the breath, feel the surrender. Even if it's just for 2 seconds, let it be alive. The sixth mistake is forgetting that silence can be part of the whisper. This practice doesn't mean you must always respond with words. Sometimes the whisper leads you to stay quiet, to let presence itself do the talking. If you think it always forces you to speak, you'll miss one of its most subtle powers, knowing when silence carries more truth than sound. And finally, the seventh mistake, doubting too soon. The ego loves to whisper back, "This can't be real. How can such a simple phrase change so much?" But simplicity is often where the deepest power lives. If you give up before giving it a chance, you'll never experience its true effect. Trust the process. Trust the energy. Let the results speak for themselves.
Awesome.
When you avoid these pitfalls, the whisper becomes more than a technique. It becomes second nature. You'll notice that the mistakes start to fade, not because you try harder, but because your awareness grows. And that growth is the true sign that the whisper is working. Up to now, we've focused a lot on how others respond when you whisper before you speak. And that's beautiful. You see relationships soften, conflicts resolve, doors open. But let me tell you something even more important. The greatest transformation happens inside of you. At first, this practice feels like a tool you use. You pause, you breathe, you whisper, and then you speak. But over time, something subtle begins to shift. You realize the whisper isn't just about speaking differently. It's about being differently. One of the first changes people notice is in their thoughts. The inner chatter that used to be full of judgment, anxiety, or criticism slowly begins to change. Because every time you whisper, you're creating a new pattern, not just in your speech, but in your mind. Instead of rehearsing arguments in your head, you start rehearsing peace. Instead of worrying how people will react, you start trusting that whatever flows through you will be enough. The inner voice that once fueled fear begins to sound more like a friend. Then you notice a change in your emotions. Situations that used to trigger irritation or defensiveness don't grip you as tightly anymore. You still feel emotions. This isn't about suppressing them, but you begin to rise above them, like watching waves from the shore instead of drowning in them. Anger comes, but it passes quicker. Sadness arrives, but it doesn't paralyze. And when joy comes, it feels purer, freer, unburdened by the ego's need to control. Most profoundly, you notice a change in your consciousness itself. You start to feel a deeper connection with the divine, not only when you're meditating or praying, but in the middle of conversations, in the middle of daily life. The whisper becomes a doorway to living in continuous awareness. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to remember, I am not alone, I am a channel. And this changes the way you see others too. Instead of seeing enemies or strangers, you start seeing souls. Instead of focusing only on their flaws, you sense their potential. You realize that the same divine presence you're whispering to is also living in them. Communication becomes less about exchanging information and more about recognizing unity. Many students describe this shift with words like lightness or freedom. They say, I feel like I don't have to fight so hard anymore. Because the pressure to be clever, persuasive, or impressive fades away. You stop carrying the weight of having to get it right. You discover the joy of letting wisdom flow through you instead of forcing it from you. And then something magical happens. People begin to mirror back to you the energy you're carrying. They become calmer, kinder, more open. Not just because of what you're saying, but because of who you're becoming. The whisper, in this way, is not just a practice for communication. It's a practice for transformation. So yes, whispering before you speak changes how others hear you. But more than that, it changes how you hear yourself. It rewrites the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you live. It's not only a technique, it's a path to becoming your truest self. What we've been exploring isn't just a modern communication tip, it's part of an ancient stream of wisdom that flows through the yogic tradition and through the very heart of Yogananda's mission. Yogananda often said that words are more than sounds. They are vessels of prana, life energy. When you speak from your ego, you transmit ego. But when you align with the divine before you speak, you transmit spirit. And that is why his words reach not only the minds, but the souls of thousands, even across cultures and languages. He wasn't merely giving lectures, he was channeling living truth. Whisper Your Learning is not about manipulation, persuasion, or charisma. It's about speaking from the soul. And that is exactly what Yogananda modeled: communication that bypasses the surface mind and touches the inner being. That's why people who heard him, even just once, often said their lives were never the same again. In fact, if you study the great masters, whether it's Christ, Buddha, Krishna, or Yogananda, you'll notice something remarkable. Their words were often simple. No complicated vocabulary, no clever debates, but the simplicity carried immense power because it was charged with divine awareness. They whispered before they spoke, not necessarily with the exact mantra we've shared, but with the same inner attitude, not my will but thy will. That surrender was the secret. And here's something important for you to understand. When you practice this whisper, you're not just improving your communication, you're aligning yourself with a greater purpose. You're becoming part of that same flow of wisdom that has moved through saints and sages for millennia. You're stepping into a lineage of souls who chose to let the divine speak through them instead of the small self. Think about it. Every time you whisper, you're saying, I step aside, I open. I allow something higher to move through me. That intention itself is transformative. It lifts you from being just a personality with opinions into being a channel of light. And every time you do it, you're participating in a sacred mission. The mission to awaken higher consciousness in this world, one conversation at a time. Yogananda's vision wasn't just that people meditate for 20 minutes in the morning and then return to their old ways. His vision was to bring spirituality into every part of life, into how you work, how you love, how you speak. The whisper is one way of living that vision. It's how you turn daily speech into prayer, how you make every conversation part of your spiritual path. And that's the greater purpose. This isn't about impressing others. It's about serving them. It's about lifting them. It's about remembering that your voice can be a channel for healing, for inspiration, for awakening. When you whisper, you're not just preparing to talk, you're preparing to serve. So as you practice this, know that you're not alone. You're walking a path that countless seekers have walked before you. And every time you whisper, you're connecting yourself to that living tradition of souls who chose to let divine love flow through their words. Now that you've understood the depth and purpose of this whisper, let me walk you through exactly how to practice it. Because this isn't something to just admire, it's something to live. Here's how you can begin. First, pause and breathe. Before any important conversation, or even a simple one, take a moment for a conscious breath. Inhale slowly, feel the air filling your chest, and exhale with intention. This breath creates the space for spirit to enter. Second, bring your awareness upward. In the yogic tradition, we focus on the spiritual eye, the point between the eyebrows. This isn't just symbolic, it's a doorway to higher consciousness. As you breathe, let your awareness naturally rise there, as if you're tuning into a higher station of energy. Third, whisper the sacred words. Silently or softly, say, Divine Spirit, speak through me. Feel the vibration of those words echo within you. Don't rush them. Don't treat them like a formula. Say them as if you mean them, with sincerity, with surrender. Fourth, visualize light. Imagine a soft, radiant glow filling your throat, your heart, your whole being. See this light as the energy that will flow into your words. Let it purify, let it empower, let it align you. Fifth, speak from that space. Now open your mouth and let the words come. Don't overthink, don't try to control. Trust that the whisper has already set the tone. Let your words flow naturally, knowing they're being carried by something higher than yourself. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need minutes to do this. With practice, you can complete the entire process in just a few seconds. One conscious breath, one whispered phrase, one silent surrender, and then you speak. No one around you even needs to know you're doing it, but they will feel the difference. At first, it may feel a little awkward. You might forget in the middle of a heated conversation. That's okay. The key is consistency. Try it once a day, then twice. Then before every conversation that matters, soon it becomes second nature. You'll catch yourself automatically whispering before your words come out. And that's when the magic begins, when it's no longer just a practice, but your way of being. So don't wait for the perfect moment. Start with the very next conversation you have today. Whisper, speak, and watch how the atmosphere changes. Watch how people soften, how they listen, how they feel your presence. And most importantly, watch how you feel lighter, calmer, more aligned. You may be wondering, where exactly should I use this whisper? When does it matter most? The truth is, you can use it anytime, anywhere, but there are certain situations where this practice becomes almost miraculous in its effect. Let's begin with conflict. Perhaps someone is criticizing you, raising their voice, or simply not understanding your point. Normally, your instinct would be to defend yourself, to argue, or to withdraw. But when you take that single breath, whisper, "Divine Spirit, speak through me," and then respond, something shifts instantly. Your energy softens, and theirs begins to mirror it. Instead of reacting to their anger, you speak to their humanity. And suddenly the tension in the air melts. What could have escalated into a fight becomes a doorway to understanding. Next, think about leadership. Maybe you lead a team, a family, or even just a group of friends who look to you for guidance. Ordinary leadership speaks from authority or fear, but true leadership speaks from spirit. When you whisper before addressing others, you're not just giving instructions, you're transmitting calm, confidence, and vision. People feel safe in your presence. They want to follow, not because you force them, but because your words carry a light they can trust. Now let's talk about relationships. With your partner, your children, your family, communication often carries years of patterns, wounds, and expectations. One wrong word can ignite old arguments. But when you whisper before speaking, you break that cycle. You no longer speak from your wounded self. You speak from your highest self. Imagine saying something difficult to your spouse, but with words wrapped in divine energy. They won't just hear your message, they'll feel your love behind it. That's the difference. Then there's the realm of everyday life, conversations with a neighbor, a colleague, or even a stranger at the store. You might think those exchanges don't matter, but they do. Every word you speak is planting seeds. And when you whisper before those words, you turn even casual conversations into small acts of healing. You never know, the kind word you spoke from spirit might be the very thing someone needed to hear that day. Finally, consider moments of silence. The whisper doesn't always have to lead to words. Sometimes you whisper it inwardly, and instead of speaking, you simply listen. And that silence, charged with divine presence, becomes more powerful than any speech. People feel it. They feel safe. They feel seen. So whether it's conflict, leadership, love, or simple daily interactions, the whisper works the same way. It connects you to a higher energy that transforms not just the words you say, but the space in which you say them. And over time, people won't just notice that you speak differently. They'll notice that they feel different around you. More peaceful, more open, more themselves. That, my friend, is the silent proof of this practice. And so, dear soul, we come to the end of this journey together. You've discovered that words are not just sounds, they are carriers of energy. They can wound, or they can heal. They can separate, or they can unite. And now you hold a secret that Yogananda himself taught, the sacred whisper that transforms ordinary speech into divine connection. Remember, it isn't about the exact words you say, it's about the consciousness you carry behind them. When you pause, take that breath, and whisper, "Divine Spirit, speak through me." You're inviting something higher to flow through you. Suddenly, your words stop being yours. They become vessels of peace, love, and truth. I encourage you, before your very next conversation, try it. Just once. Whisper inwardly, then watch. Not just how others respond, but how you feel. You'll notice more calm, more clarity, and a surprising freedom from fear. And as you repeat this practice day after day, it won't feel like a technique anymore. It will become your natural way of speaking, your natural way of being, because in truth, this is who you are. You are not the small self that worries about saying the right thing. You are the soul, connected to infinite wisdom, and your words can become instruments of that wisdom. So, my friend, as you step back into your daily life, carry this gift with you. Whisper before you speak. Let spirit flow through your words, and watch how not only others change, but how you change. If this message has touched your heart, I invite you to write in the comments, "Divine Spirit, speak through me." Declaring it will open your heart and anchor this practice in your life. And if you wish to continue receiving these timeless teachings of Yogananda that can awaken your soul and transform your daily life, make sure to subscribe to this channel. It's the simplest way to keep walking this path of light together. Until next time, may every word you speak be filled with love, every silence with peace, and every breath with the presence of the divine. Peace, dear soul.